Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Education Budget Workshop number 2, this Thursday, March 18th. Would you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and may we have a motion, please, to move out of executive session?
So moved.
Mike Alt, second by Maria. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Apologize, we went over a few minutes there. So before we go any further, I do have a statement I'd like to read on behalf of our board. As board members, we view this district as our community. Collectively, we are a community comprised of teachers, PTSA leaders, parents, business leaders, and we represent all of you as students, administration, parents, staff, and community members in the same capacity, all of whom may have differing viewpoints, especially during this extremely unprecedented year. All of our families have been impacted by this pandemic. We are concerned for everyone, those who want a swift return and those who prefer the current format. Our schools have done an extraordinary job navigating this historic year. Everyone has made monumental concessions because of COVID. Our students, our staff, our administration, and our families. This Board of Education has viewed the health and safety of our students and staff as our #1 priority, and we have not wavered. We have exemplified our commitment to following best practices and guidance since the onset of COVID. We've adhered to 6-foot social distancing, wearing masks, and ensuring staff has access to any federally approved vaccine. We have appreciated the efforts of state and local guidance to educate, inform, and keep us safe. We also recognize the true authority lies with the New York State Department of Health and the New York State Governor. We have followed the science and we have followed the facts. As a board, we are responsible to represent our district to the best of our ability with respect and tolerance for all. Social media is a relatively new dynamic in our society, one that can unite, keep people from harm's way, and provide refuge for those in need. It can also divide, share false, unverified information, cause alarm, and sow unrest. As a board and a district, we are experiencing the damaging effects of the latter. Recent social media posts have been reckless in advising their followers, defamed us as a board and as individuals. Social media pages devoted to advising people to vote down their school budgets, that their boards of education are to blame for the reopening of school or not, and that we benefit as individuals for our service to our community are false. Not only are they false, they are defamatory and dangerous. Tonight is a budget advisory workshop. You have an opportunity to learn and ask questions. You have an opportunity to learn what happens when budgets are defeated. You have an opportunity to avail yourself of accurate information, and you always have the opportunity to contact us offline to discuss these matters. As board members, it is our responsibility to uphold the mission and vision of our district by remaining true to the values of collaboration and continuous improvement. It is also inherent that we act with respect and integrity when confronting difficult situations. We are equally concerned with those wanting an immediate return and others wanting to stay the current course. A return to school is not a win-lose scenario, and it is based solely on the professional and medical guidance we have followed for the past year. This situation is far beyond what any of us might have imagined, and will require our consolidated efforts to emerge a better and more compassionate school district. It is our duty to do so for the stakeholders we serve, all while knowing that it is truly for the students. So with that, we will move into regular business, and that would be the first reading of the draft of the 2022 school calendar, believe it or not.
Thank you, Tammy. So believe it or not, September of 21 is right around the corner. And we're going to be welcoming our kids back to full-time school. if not at the end of April, but certainly by September 7th, that will be their first day back at school. And the calendar is very similar to a typical calendar. There will be parent-teacher conference days, both in the spring and in the fall. We'll have a February break in the typical President's Week, and a April break and Christmas and all that good stuff. So basically, there's no surprises there. It's all, and I think, and Mr. Neenan, correct me if I'm wrong, because Miss Richardson asked me this question and I gave her an answer and I was pretty sure I was right, but I want to make sure that I'm right. Do we have our 2 or 3 snow days built in?
To the 2021-22 school year? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Whew, good thing. So, so we get back to traditional snow days. I get to have fun on Twitter again. But this is the first reading, and we'll bring it back to you guys in April for the second reading and adoption.
Okay, thank you, Carm.
Okay.
We are moving on to the Schrader bid and revisiting this again. Brian, if you could speak to that.
Sure. Cindy, do you want me to share, or you could just scroll down to that? Oh, perfect. All right, give me 2 seconds to. All right, can everybody see this new bid information? So we rebid the general contract as we rejected the bids last time. And for the main reason is we saw an opportunity to add some additional work into this bid. So still had the same contractor win the bid, but we were able to add some classroom renovations, which weren't in the original bid, and the house office remodels to have some asbestos abatement, new ceilings, new flooring, add that into there and get that all bid. And then we also spelled out the flooring product in the bathrooms to see if an alternative product would come in a little bit with a different price than the one we initially specified in the documents. So all in told, we were looking to add almost $1 million of work into Schrader under this bid. And the original bid was for about 2.6 when we were out in January. The bid now with the additional $1 million worth of what we had estimated worth of work came in at 3.1, what we're accepting. So $1 million what we projected, and the bid itself was only a little over $500,000 more than the last time. So about half the cost. So this is the reason why we did it. We knew bidding was good. We could get more in for the value. So that's why we went through the process to have the original rebid rejected, or the original bid rejected on the general contractor side, and now accepting this new bid that we opened last Friday, and hopeful to break ground soon after you guys approve and accept this bid for the general contractor. Any questions?
Okay. Not seeing any questions. Thank you for reworking this. I'm certainly glad it worked in our favor. Thank you for all the effort behind this. Can we have a motion, please, to accept the Schrader bid? Mike, and a second by Sue. All in favor?
Aye.
Good news. Okay. Thank you. And then, Brian, do you also want to speak to the
Sure.
health? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we get about probably 4 or 5 of these a year. Unfortunately, it's a spouse requesting to remain on our healthcare plan. They pay 100% after the employee of the district has passed away. So as part of board policy, they present a request into the business office, and then I turn that over to you saying, they are willing to pay at 100% of the cost, and that we would have no problem maintaining the surviving spouse in the plan going forward.
And any question about this request?
Brian, do they pay the insurance company directly, or do they pay the school district and we pay the insurance company?
They pay us 100% of the premium costs.
Us being the school district?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Kind of standard request. Can we have a motion then, please, to accept the health benefit request letter? That was just about everybody. Maria and Saf, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
This is so great. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the budget workshop. Opening comments, Vice President Dioguardi.
Thank you. The Webster Central School District's Board of Education, composed of 7 elected volunteers from the community, sets goals for education in the district every year. These goals help the district measure its success in relation to meeting community and state education standards. The district uses them to guide the budget process and to help prioritize budget items. Our district's long history of fiscal responsibility is a hallmark of the board and serves as one of the measures of district success. Budget development and implementation, audit oversight, fiscal governance require close consideration of not only current needs, but also those extending well into the future. District administration, staff, and our board understand that decisions we make today have a direct impact on the district's future financial health. As the Board of Education, we acknowledge the tremendous sacrifice all have made to guide our students through this unsettling time. We remain sensitive to the uncertain future caused by job loss and economic pain that so many families continue to experience. We are committed to honoring our community's investment in our children and their education by presenting a budget that balances educational needs with finite resources. Tonight is our second budget workshop. Workshop meetings are used by the Board of Education to gather information and ask questions about particular sections of the budget. Brian Freeman will lead us in tonight's workshop, and we will learn more about the instructional areas, including curriculum, special ed, instructional technology, library, athletics, co-curricular areas, and community education. These are all the areas that impact our students the most.
Thank you so much, Linda, for your comments. We appreciate it. And Brian?
All right, I'll take it away. Can everybody see the presentation? Do I need to adjust sizing or any from my screen? Make it bigger, smaller? I see some thumbs up. Perfect.
Yep, looks okay.
All right, so tonight's agenda, we're really going to touch upon workshop 1 was all about the operational items of the district. We're really going to focus on the instructional aspects of the budget this evening. But first, I just want to recommend one change. I believe we had some discussions about this, and really because it's been in my world an exciting week in school finance. Both the Assembly and the Senate have released what we call their legislative budget proposals. Probably have heard me talk several times about the 3 people in a room, how Albany does their budget, going with just the head of the Assembly, the president of the Senate, and the governor. The 3 of them hash out this budget. And one of the reasons why I recommend this change is to move a budget adoption back, have a 3rd workshop that really focuses on state aid and final revenue, and then is really about the time to digest what I think is going to happen in the next 2 weeks. And I'll touch upon that a little bit in the next slide. Plus it's over the Easter holiday, so that sometimes delays reporting. I think we really need a workshop that specializes in what in the state budget and focuses on those revenues. Plus there's still a lot of information to come out with the last stimulus package from the federal government. There is money earmarked for schools there. There's been numbers thrown about I've seen on Twitter and seen from different news reports and press releases, but normally that money flows through the state to us. So there's a lot to be determined there because it could have some substantial impact. So we want a little bit more time to digest that and give you guys the best information moving forward. So that's one change that I was recommending that we do is, in essence, create a third workshop in April and delay budget adoption by a week from our original budget calendar. And why? So I don't think in the last 10 years I've seen the legislative budgets that were released hot off the press on Monday and on Tuesday so different from what the governor has proposed back in January as part of his budget. And so they've had many similar items, and I'll run through some of these for you. Number one, they reject the services aid consolidation. If you remember, that is trying to get the transportation aid, the Boces aid, our instructional materials aid like library, software, textbook, all those combined into one thing called service aid. So both houses have rejected that. They do not want to go along with that. They'll keep the aid categories separate. A huge difference, and I highlighted it, is both will unfreeze foundation aid. 1.4 billion from the Assembly, 1.37 in the Senate. Not too much of a difference, just a small difference. But that's huge because for 3 years, we've had the same foundation aid, 3 fiscal years that have been proposed by the governor. So the unfreezing, that is big news because it's a complete 180 from what the governor proposed. They've also proposed a 3-year phase-in of the plan, which they have not done previously. Every district would get a minimum foundation aid. Don't know what that looks like, but both of them have stated every district would get some kind of due minimum. Would restore prior year aid claims. That's a change from what the governor has said. So for us, our prior year aid claims is about $850,000. So it would restore that. And that any aid takebacks can be offset by prior year aid claims. So if the state says, oh, we overpaid you, we're going to take it away, rather than say they're going to take it away right away, they're just going to take it off of our prior year balance. That's fairly substantial. Allowing all the 1920 transportation costs, what we call standby usage, because as we were being put on hold every 2 weeks, schools closed for 2 weeks, we're virtual 2 weeks, virtual 2 weeks, we were always on standby. DOT was still inspecting buses. We had the drivers ready to go. We were doing all their testing to maintain their licenses. We were pulling them in. So all those standby costs that had previously said in the fall were not going to be allowed for aid. Both legislative groups are saying, yep, can utilize them for aid. Utilize the CARES 2, the ESCRA is the other acronym for it, the CARES 2 that came out in December, right before the new year. Funding to supplement, not supplant state funding. So as it previously showed in February, we had, $7.9 million of COVID stimulus coming in and 7.9 coming out of state. It was a wash. That's huge language. How is that going to work out that money is supposed to supplement, not supplant? There is identical language for the first time in many, many years that both houses agreed to have a state retirement incentive around the teachers' retirement system. So that's has a major impact on all districts as far as staffing and time to digest that. Increasing unrestricted fund balance limits from 4% to either 6 or 8. The Senate is 8, Assembly was 6. So that is big news. And then some additional funding, almost $500 million to UPK statewide. So this is just a quick snapshot of all the changes that could possibly be coming that would have a big impact. And was one of the reasons why I put that together and made the request to do a third workshop. That what are all these impacts going to be for Webster? I think we need time to digest that and make a good plan going forward. Any questions on some of those items before we get into really the budget areas that I could break down for anybody? All right. So first up on our budget walk tonight is the curriculum budget. It's about 1.5% of our overall budget. It goes exactly as it says for all our background curriculum needs. As far as the directors, Mr. Neenan and his group, all the professional development monies get tied into the curriculum budget. So what are some updates? So this will be the first budget cycle where we adopt the new contractual language about PDC money. As part of the teacher's contract, we had a change with the amount of money that was set aside for professional development. You'll see when we look into the numbers, some salary breakage for retirements. Boces Costs in this area, we do a lot of work with Boces to source some of our professional development. Those costs have been able to remain flat in those budget areas. So overall, year to year, 1% reduction in the budget. And if we look at the numbers, so our instructional salaries are just going up a little over 1%. Our non-instructional salaries, see a reduction there. The other line items, supplies, contractuals, professional development, and Boces all remaining flat. So a small savings in the curriculum area of $22,384. So down about 1% on the curriculum side. And a lot of things, you know, on our contractuals that we spend here is the rental of the Basket Road facility that we use for a lot of professional development work, as well as our tutoring center that's included here. And then our professional development is just conferences, anything that people apply to go to through the PDC center, or all those costs are included here, and the secretarial support to go with it. So starting off on the instruction side with a little budget reduction. Next up is our instructional budget, which is 31% of the proposed budget. This includes your building budgets, your everything that's included in those areas besides library, including all your supervision costs, your principals, all your teachers, K through 12 teachers. They're in this instructional budget. Anything you can think of, first grade, or Spanish teacher, boom, this is the part of the budget that they're in. So contractual salaries, we're realizing some retirement savings from the 1920 group. So we always keep them on the books for an extra year as they qualify for an incentive. They come off the books a year later. So we're realizing some breakage when it comes to salaries. You'll see the salaries not growing as much because of that. You're going to see a couple things as well with minimum wage when we get to those numbers. Non-instructional salary lines with our teacher aides. Second to that, you'll see a big difference in the numbers on the non-instructional salary lines, and I'll get into that a little bit more. Boces Costs, this is our student management system. A lot of those things that we pay into, any kind of our enrichment or curriculars, all go into our Boces Costs here. Our science kits, those programs all come through this Boces area. And then you'll see some movement, small reductions here, increases there based on budget requests from the buildings. Those fluctuate from year to year depending on what the budget the building would like to allocate their budgets to. So I'll contribute to about a 1.2% increase in the budget year over year. So specifically with the building budgets, because it is a large part in this current fiscal year, 2020-21, you've seen we did a 10% reduction to kind of help close the budget gap. For 21-22, we've allowed our per pupil formula to run. As a reminder, we allocate 175 for elementary, 185 for middle school, and 225 for high school. And then we have additional multipliers. If there's an ENL program, if the free reduced lunch rate of the building is higher than the district average, they get some additional funding. And if there's special classes in the building, that building also gets additional funding. So it's going to look like there's a significant year over year, but actually from 2 years ago, we're down because of enrollment. Using the same exact formula, we just haven't done a 10% reduction. For this year, we're letting the formulas go back a year to when we were in 1920. And not 2021 when we had a 10% reduction. This is always one of the first areas we look to trim should we need to adjust our revenue targets didn't get hit. That's why in 2020-21, we did the 10% reduction to building budgets. We always choose staff over stuff. And a lot of the building budgets is the stuff that the buildings buy. So 10% reduction there. So it's the first area we look to trim. This will probably change depending on how our revenue shakes out, but this is the first overall look of where our budgets have been. You can see a 4-year look back. You see the Schrader and Thomas, you see the big difference. Generally, the blue and the purple are the most accurate together. The green has been purposely reduced for this budget cycle. Okay. And then when we break into the numbers, you see salaries just growing at 1.1. Our substitutes were able to maintain that budget line. And then you see the non-instructional salaries. Besides minimum wage impacting here, we also took the time over the summer to kind of do an audit of our support staff with Colleen Armstrong and take a look at who really is in special education. It was we actually looked at our stacks, and I'll take a small detour and explain that process. So the stack process is really the system that we use with New York State to get our extra aid for students with disabilities. So if you have a student with a disability and they have a one-to-one aid, all the costs of that one-to-one aid go with that kid. So we have to identify who those people are, and we take all their costs, submit it to the state, and that's what drives some extra special education aid. So normally we would do reports out of the special education budget, but we noticed when we did this audit that many of the aides that were in the special education budget were actually not working with special education students. They were actually general building aides. So as part of that was we cleaned up that process. So you see an extra increase here that is really not even in line with minimum wage, which has been 6 to 7%, because we've added extra people to this budget line that weren't in and were coming out of special ed, and now they're really where they need to be. So we have a better process, so we're able to capture those costs on the special ed side and submit those and not have to work through this of who's a building aid and who isn't working with kids with students with disabilities. So we did a little audit over the summer with that, and that's the result. So you see that's why that one's a little different compared to everybody else. We're seeing a change in equipment, some reductions there, supplies going up. These are all based on a lot of requests. You see enrichment cultural arts changing a little, some minor increase in textbook. Boces, we've been able the last 2 years to maintain no cost increases there. And then a very small decrease in the contractuals. Like I said, that's all based on submittals from the buildings. And you'll see that special education reduction when we talk about their portion of the building, of the budget, excuse me. So overall, these areas up 1.2%, big savings from the retirement breakage with higher salaries going out and lower salaries replacing with that turnover. Questions on the instructional side? All right.
Brian, real quick, is headcount about flat between the 2 years for instructional?
Right now, yes. Yep. What we're planning for FTE is almost identical what we have this year.
Okay. So it is then the higher salaries being replaced by lower salaries. That's
correct. Yep.
Down. Okay, thank you.
Yep. It's specific. Yeah. On this instructional budget, yes, it is all about the salary change. With the special education budget now, that's a little about 10.5% of the overall budget. And we could take you through some changes there. So some changes happening. Owl South is moving into one program. Those resources are going into a middle school program. And then we have some Boces placement savings, but you will see some salary increases because this will be the first time on the books as far as the budget. The high school OWL program is in addition to the budget. We use savings to offset that, but this is the first time it's actually showing up on the budget end, and that includes teachers, TAs, and other support staff. So some changes on the special education side. And right off the bat, just point those non-instructional salaries, you see a reduction of 6.14% there. Those are the salaries leaving. The aides that were really not special education aides are we're moving over to that other line. Okay, then the instructional salaries, you do see an increase there. That is the creation of the high school program that was increased some teachers there, expansion, planning for that, all offset by, on the Boces side, the $400,000 savings, down almost 8%. Big difference there is, we control costs on the instructional salaries. Boces sets the costs for tuitions. We don't control those costs. So we're doing this while we have the room, creating these programs because it's just better for kids. We're more invested in it, and keeping them home and with our own staff, with our own training, always works out better than the Boces pathway. So some savings there this year. So special education, I know if you look back the past couple of years, we've seen that on the Boces side. We've changed a few things. We've gone down 5.6 million 2 years ago from the 1920 to 5.1. So overall 500,000, down 100,000 between 1920 and 2021. Overall special education for next year, 2.04%. Next up is our technology budget, which came in very handy this year as we adapted to new teaching styles and remote learning. So the fourth area is the tech budget. And what is happening in the tech budget? You're going to increase in our Boces costs for operating software, fiber networking, and our emergency system notification products, like the Remind app that we utilize is one of them that we're seeing some price spikes there. Our copier lease program, so we started this 5 years ago, so it's on a 5-year renewal. So we're actually going to see some savings there, but we're turning that right around and reinvesting in cybersecurity. The more we could do with cybersecurity, that's where we're going to put some money. So we're saving on the 5-year rather than take those savings. We thought it was prudent to put it back into cybersecurity upgrades for the district. We have 24/7 network monitoring, and we're going to do a couple other things that we'll keep kind of secret that we're doing. Our state aid equipment and software lines unchanged. We're still expecting, we spend $1, we get $1. So we're keeping those line items the same, nothing really unchanged there. And then salaries really in line with contractual obligations. We've had some employee movement. So we're seeing the minor salary breakage, not nearly as drastic as the amount of retirements. We've had people that have moved on, gone to other places, gotten jobs elsewhere, replaced with somebody else that wasn't making as much, but still the same headcount FTE, but some salary breakage, which keeps numbers down overall. So as you can see on the instructional side, 2.69% increase. On the non-instructional side, where the bulk of our employees in the tech department are working, just a 1.1% increase. That equipment and software you see have stayed the same level. The equipment and software, that's the dollar to dollar exchange we get with the state. We spend it, we get it right back the following year. And then our contractual amounts, our conferences, and our supplies, minor dip in our supplies. And then the Boces service, a $75,000 increase. That number seemed, about 2%. All of our software that we have done, generally going up about 2%. And just to point out that inside that Boces number is all of our hardware that we purchase. So all the Chromebooks, all the teacher laptops, monitors, the camera that I'm utilizing tonight. Because of that, we're able to, in the lease program, over a third, and a third that we do every year. Really, we're turning that line item into almost $9 million worth of tech that we have in the district. But we're only paying a third of it every year through the lease program. So one of the things I always like to point out, that we get more bang for our buck when we're spending it through this process at Boces. So overall, another below 2% increase going into next year. So you're seeing the theme, not a lot of increases across. We're keeping our spending tight and staying right around 2%. Very few areas will be over that. Next up is our library budget, somewhat smaller, but a couple changes. Our database and software products are increasing. This has been something that's creating some budget angst the past couple of years. We just, the library search engines, certain things, those software costs seem every year when Brian Zimmer and Larry Wall and I go and meet with Boces and look at those costs, are staying in those mid like 4 to 6% every year range. So there's not really much we can do with that other than we don't want to stop what we're utilizing. So it's a smaller part of the budget, so it looks a little out of whack compared to the contractual costs we see with everything else. See some changes to supply equipment lines on the library side based on what the principals and the buildings are looking at. And we have seen some staff movement, and so you'll see some breakage there. Some people have left the district, so what we're anticipating replacing with is going to go down. So a very, very small year over year, even with a 5% increase on Boces, really not that big of an impact, practically a flat budget going into next year on the library side. Okay. On the pupil services budget, this is your psychologists, your nurses, your social workers, our occupational education program through EMCC. That is all wrapped up into the pupil services budget, a lot of those support instructional areas. So some changes there. Summer school planning, you'll see the movement of dollars. Traditionally, we have always participated with 100% with Boces in the summer school when it comes to traditional education. The student unfortunately doesn't successfully complete a class. They go to Boces to take that class in summer school. Generally, the past few years, it's been at East Irondequoit. So we're looking at a new model, in an in-district model. So you'll see increases in salaries and a reduction in Boces. Okay. There's two things I'll point out ahead of time. Salaries are up. It's not a full one-to-one savings. And the second reason why is conservative budgeting. Could flip a coin. Don't know what's going to happen next year. Are we going to have remote? And so are we planning for some form of regional remote? Kind of similar to how we would run the EMCC. I know Mr. Neenan and myself are sitting on a county-wide Zoom meeting tomorrow to discuss what does that look like? What's the cost structure? So this is an area I have a budget number set for a couple extra FTEs, you could say, in case we're required by the state to keep remote going for another year. Your guess is as good as mine. Are we going to need to do it? Do we not? Planning conservatively that there's going to be some kind of cost associated with it. Is it a regional? Is it we have to run our own? I don't know, but I don't want us to be caught financially in a bad situation where we're not at least planning and thinking about it and having those discussions as an administrative team and curriculum team. So our EMCC costs are also going up for the career and technical education programs that we offer. All other line items are remaining flat. So when we look at the numbers, you see that's why the instructional salaries are higher and the Boces services down 125,000, but we're having an EMCC, which is a Boces service cost, go up. So that is eating some of the savings that we're transferring over to the instructional salaries. Non-instructional salaries, we see some breakage there. That's mostly on the support staff, our nurses, nurses area. We've seen some movement in FTEs. Still the same amount of FTEs, but we've had some people move, resign over the last year. So we're just taking into account changes in salaries there. No retirements, just pure breakage on people moving. So overall, this is probably the part of the budget that's up the most in the district in comparison, 5.5%, because we don't know what's going to happen with the remote. In 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe we come back with that workshop and we could adjust this and say, all right, you know what, we don't need remote, or it's going to look something different with more some specification. But this is where I'm planning for us to have the possibility of remote going into next year.
Ryan, is this the budget category that also provides mental health services to our students?
Yep, all of our psychologists and social workers and guidance counselors, they're all located in this part of the budget.
So probably very tough to predict, but everything we're reading, right? Mental health needs and support services may go up substantially next year. Do you think we're budgeted appropriately if we see that?
I will defer to Mr. Gumina and Ms. Armstrong on that question. Because I'm not in the weeds on that on a day-to-day basis of do we have enough staff to do that?
Yeah. So Mike, that's a great question. We know that's going to be our number one focus area for certainly next fall and even for late April, assuming we can come back to full-time school. And I know Colleen and I and the entire senior leadership team are looking at some staffing models that just take a look at, okay, what kind of mental health support do we need? Behavioral specialist support do we need? School psych. And depending on what our budget numbers are like, we may be able to tweak that model going into next fall.
Right.
Okay,
and depending on how the revenue shakes out over the next couple of weeks, that maybe, we get notification that, we don't have to do a remote next year, and some FTEs could be repurposed here or there to do some further support on the mental health side. Similar to how we've treated everything that we've done. We've, reinvested in the copier savings into some more cybersecurity. If we could claw back or save some of those things and send it over to that part of the budget, so it's kind of a net neutral, not really an increaser. We're always looking to do that across every department that we is part of our budget planning.
So Brian, also, if we think about where in order to maintain remote learning comes from, would that be the state education department, an executive order?
Yeah, that's what we would imagine would come from SED. Either, like everything, we've been doing in the past year, is finding out what's going to happen around an 11:30 a.m. press conference. Is it, and then an executive order that comes after it. Is it going to be like that, or is it going to be something SED on its own goes and mandates? So we're just waiting kind of to hear and how that model looks. Is it, we need maybe 2 FTE at the elementary to pull it off, and 2 at middle and 2 at high school, or it's a collective regional collaboration approach to it. So as far as from a budgeting perspective, I'm just trying to cover our bases to be prepared to respond to it versus what's really the best model. I'll leave that up to the other Brian in the room right now to come up with that. I just got to pay for it.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So next, athletics and co-curricular, about 1.62% of the budget. And not a lot changing there. Just, the salary increases are at the contractual rate. One area of increase is the streaming services. I'm not sure how many of you have been able to participate watching some of your own kids that, with the lack of not being able to go to in person and being able to stream events from both schools and different sporting events. We added it this year as kind of a pandemic cost, but we're going to keep that going. We're going to maintain that service next year for families. Hopefully we'll improve it. I know Boces is looking you know, I don't think they've ever had that many people buy into the streaming service that they've had. So I'd imagine we're going to see some changes there. So it's a budget add for 21-22. We've tried to keep as many things flat as possible, but that's one that we've added. So you can see that's a $25,000 cost. It is an increase. Based on the size of the budget, it looks like the percent change is way out of line, but overall it's a $25,000 cost to the athletics budget. They're holding everything else they're doing firm on the equipment, supplies, and on the contractuals, as far as assuming we're going to be back to normal with, you know, paying out officials, game officials for all seasons, paying out supervisors next year as well, that come out of those contractual lines. So overall, the athletics co-curricular up 2.5%. The majority of that is the 25,000 on the Boces service being added and keeping that going, the streaming services, which I've watched a couple myself. And it was actually a pretty good experience doing it that way. And so I think it really helped a lot of our families. So it's something I think we'll keep permanently and do permanently, because I could see this, the long-term positivity out of it is, you know, if a grandma and grandpa might not be able to make it in person, but they could watch it from home. I think it's a great family orientated move, and such a small part that it's an easy add to the budget going forward. All right. And then last area is the community ed budget. Very small portion of the budget, but a lot of fun things happening in community education. We have some retirements and movements, so you'll see some salaries going down, really offset at any of the increases. We're planning for another minimum wage. This is where all our kids are working. This is all our lifeguards. This is all really our high school kids that we hire to do some stuff. So we're expecting, we don't know what it's going to be, but a minimum wage impact. But we think we'll get that back, you know, on a lot of program offerings through continuing ed. We're looking to expand our digital footprint on that and do some more, and opening back up the in-person footprint. The Thomas Pool upgrades are almost complete, so Learn to Swim will take back off. And one of the things that actually Blaine and I have really studied, we've retroed all the lights at the aquatic center, and there is no cost differential. We compared a couple months worth of bills for being open an extra 24 hours. So we're probably going to add some more Sunday time to our pools and facilities to give parents choice when we redo the Learn to Swim stuff. It's practically nothing to add additional hours with how much we're saving on the lighting and on replacing the HVAC systems that are going into these. There is no facilities cost for being open that day. It's not even a blip on the bill. We're saving money. So we looked at that comparison and opening the facilities up. The only costs we're going to have are lifeguards and instructors, and that gets paid for by the tuition costs. So the facility itself is not an obstacle in the way of trying to do some more programming here. So we're excited and looking forward to that, because I do know the families prefer the cozy environment of the Thomas Pool compared to the competition pool over at Schrader in the slightly chillier waters. So it'll be good to get that one back up online and see kids learning how to swim, and getting our elementary kids back over there as well too, as part of their PE curriculum. So by the numbers, this is actually another budget area that's going down. You see the savings on the instructional salaries, on the non-instructional salaries there for next year. Everything else, line items, flat. It's our pool chemicals. It's our costs for the contractuals. We do contract with some of our instructors for certain events. So you see that we're able to do flat as well. And then just kind of the slice of the instructional budget, look at it visually. Instruction is the largest part, special education, than our PPS. And you could just kind of see, I like the visual of how it's all broken down. Even we're our computer assisted, our instructional there, 6%. Even though we're a one-to-one district, we do it very, very efficiently. So all total, workshop 1, that was our original number. I actually have updated that. We've had a couple changes on the benefits side that I updated the projections based on, I constantly work through the budget season, like taking a look at the numbers of who signed up, how many retirees we have. So I reassess those numbers. So we've seen that actually it's gone down since we last met on workshop number 1. So I have a new number up there. Workshop 2, that's what we presented tonight, the total numbers, with a total budget number of 187,489,664. That's our first draft. What does that look like as compared to last year? It's $4.2 million more. It's a 2.3% increase. So tried real hard to do a line item by line item, but got it down to we're at a 2.3% increase over 2020-21 with that $4.2 million overall number, budget to budget, compared to year to year. So budget, next steps, we're in the midst of finalizing staffing, enrollment, taking a look at enrollment at elementary and course finalization for the high school. So we're still working through that. So you could see some change to these numbers by the time we get to workshop 3 and final budget adoption, because we constantly as a team work through that with our building principals. Like I said, lots of changes on state aid coming. That's my prediction. So we're really going to focus in on workshop 3 with that, and including our other revenue categories. We don't get a lot of other revenue besides tax levy and state aid, but we'll take a look at sales tax and some of the other areas. And then on the to-do list, you'll probably see before we meet again, all this go up on our budget page, the admin disclosure notice, the property tax report card, our school report card. New this year that we have to report that you'll see is the Essa financial transparency report. This is the report that we are required to do. One is due at the end of August and another is due at the end of December. This will be the one that is due at the end of December that we now have to publish and keep with the budget materials. That's new. It's on a state site, but now we just got to drag it over and publish it on our website as well. So we'll do that. And then the property tax exemption report, you'll see all that go up. We get that from the town and the counties where we have properties. So pretty much Wayne County and Monroe County will have those reports out there. So you'll see those pop up as part of our budget website. And then just the last important dates, like I said, we're April 15th. We'll, tax day, we'll have workshop number 3. Although I did hear that there's a potential tax day is going to be moved again this year, back into May. So we'll see if that April 15th really sticks or if we're going to get that moved. Then April 22nd, we'll have budget adoption. May 1st, all the budget materials will be published. May 6th is the budget hearing. 18th is the annual vote. And then July 1 is the beginning of the new fiscal year. Any questions?
Brian, I have a question about TRS. There's been rumors that the TRS might have an early retirement incentive this year. Have you heard that? And
it is 100% not a rumor, and I believe it is 100% going to happen, because this is the first time normally that is, you probably have heard, like every year that one gets stuck in committee, like an assembly person from downstate will say, here's a retirement incentive, and it always just gets stuck there and nobody does anything with it. This is the first year I've seen since the Great Recession where they've both Assembly and Senate have already agreed and passed individually language that says it's a 55-25 or a 50-10. The details behind it are still not 100% out there, but in essence, a 55-25 you get your booklet and you see, in essence, you don't get the penalty. The districts would have to opt into it Anybody that becomes eligible can retire at 55. Normally, if you retire for everybody else's sake, if you retire at 55 and you're short 30 years, you take a penalty. This, in essence, waives the penalty, so you're not hurt for going right at 55, even if you're short 30 years. So it would be pretty advantageous for many people that are looking to possibly go down that route, because there is no penalty on top of it. The 50-10 one, that one has a lot more rules to it, and there is still a penalty. So I can't imagine how many people would want to jump at that one. But the 55-25 is the one where last time we did get a lot of people across the state jump at that one. So
Okay.
imagine we're all going to get email blasts as soon as they pass it on April 1 from SANES sending it to administrators, from NICET sending it to teachers, to all the paraprofessionals that would probably qualify it, that are like teaching assistants that are in the TRS system. So I'd imagine as soon as it goes, we're all going to hear about it. But it's the strong indications that they're going to override the governor and it's going to happen.
So Brian, I'm going to ask you a speculative question.
Oh, I love them. They're my favorite. I'll get my crystal ball.
If the legislature passes what they said they would on the CARES 2, right? So instead of, it being a wash with the 7 million, it's a net gain. Have you thought about what you do with that? Is it going to go into reserves?
Mike, that would be like winning the lottery. To get that is the 1 in 100 billion. I can't imagine the state doing that. You can't even dream or fathom about that. And so I think if I wasted time thinking about what we could do with that, I'd be like daydreaming off, because I don't think that is really going to happen. Even though they've said it, I don't see how they pull it off. 100%. Look at my crystal ball. I don't know how they turn that around into a net gain. When on the governor's run, it's money in and money out. And so, I don't have the fairy dust to guess that one.
I was betting you were going to come up with a good one.
He's going to think about it now.
Yeah.
Couple brief questions, Brian. The software increase, do you think that's due to a shift toward licensing agreements and monthly?
Well, I think it's in New York State. I think a lot of the software companies now have to abide by Ed Law 2D, and they've incurred a lot of costs associated with having to. They've had to burn a lot of legal costs to come into compliance and work on agreements with all the districts. So I think their product is going up because they saw their expense lines going up. In some cases, a couple of them have the market cornered, as they're like the only game in town, and that people need them. Maybe there's only one other competitor, and the chances of somebody, it's like a 2-year process. I can think of our student management system. There's only really a couple of them operating in New York State, and that's a 2-3 year look to say like, oh my God, their prices are going up so much. We got to look at the other one. That's a lift. That's a 2 to 3 year process. I've lived that before to get everybody on board. So a 6% software and crossing, it does, it doesn't seem so bad to the 3-year process to go to their competitor where you might save, a few $1,000s. The headache of doing the conversion is not nearly what you're going to get in the savings. So it's kind of a business model.
Okay. And then also, you may not want to answer this one. In terms of cybersecurity, I believe there were some Boces savings with districts being able to combine in some way, shape, or form. Is that true, or is there any way that there's savings we recognize that way? Because it's absolutely necessary and we know that. So
Right. So we were actually one of the first schools out of the gate with doing some stuff. And we actually partnered with Rush Henrietta to get it through Boces. So at least it was aidable, but the cost was still there. Because, you know, in Tammy, I don't think there's any secret. We went in and did 24/7 network monitoring. So no matter what time of day, we're literally paying people to watch our network for anything. Because, you know, it means that much to us. So we put the dollars into it, regardless of initial savings. More districts in the recent past have become very interested in some of the things we've done, especially in light of what's happened at some districts around us. And so, you know, I will say we've always pushed the gold standard in that package, but there's always we can do more. You know, Brian Zimmer, myself, and Neil Flood are doing a series over April break with JP Morgan Chase, our banking company, on what more we could do on that end, perhaps. So we're never sleeping on it. And, you know, if the price does come down, it comes down. But to us, it doesn't, you know, we're going at it with this. It doesn't matter what the price is. And I hate to say that from a business administrator perspective, but it is, I don't want to ever be the one that has to go to Carm and say, Carm, you got to cancel school for the next 2 weeks because we had an infiltration.
Right.
You know, that's not a Sunday night phone call I want to make to them. So we're going to do everything we can to avoid that.
it's an investment.
Right. And the cost is the cost. And we're going with as many of the gold standards as we can.
Okay, one more, and this is probably easy and maybe too early to answer. In terms of remote, are we able to recognize any savings or scheduling advantages to kids with the variety of courses that they might want to sign up for next year, and being able to offer maybe a singletons through a remote capacity?
That's part of the meeting Brian and I are having tomorrow. I know Boces already has a solution that we've have kids participating in for some of those one-off courses. And I think that's going to become more popular. I know Penfield has also, in some of the other East Side districts, more kids into that. But as far as savings right now, our FTEs compared to how we set up this year to how many we had the year before and what we're projecting for next year are stable. They're the same. So I think the solution on that is more of it probably becoming a regional cost and maybe a Boces cost. Brian, is there anything you want to add to that from your lens on it?
You know, Tammy, I would just add that this year we did actually get, we got lucky in the sense that we did have several of our students that needed an AP course that and it was a handful. And we did make the economical decision, you know, Brian and I worked on that together with Boces to use something called Accelerate U. Now, we use that for our AP courses because the AP curriculum is a standard national curriculum. Accelerate U does offer some other courses as well, but we didn't have the time to vet those courses to determine whether they were equivalent to Webster School District courses. But we knew that we could do that for the AP courses, and it did actually result in a savings to us, because in some cases there was only 3 kids that needed that particular AP course that was online, and those were for our remote kids. That's where that really came into play. Now, the meeting tomorrow will help us determine whether we do something like that again next year or not, but more to come, and because we're going to need more information and more inputs, if you will.
It's just a great option, but
it definitely is. It's been a fantastic thing for us to look at, but we want to make sure that the curriculum's matched too, and we can guarantee that with the AP curriculum.
Thank you. Anything from anyone else? All right. Thank you, Brian. We appreciate your time and effort so greatly.
And I made a couple aesthetic and a couple changes to this presentation. So I'll get that back out to everybody from the one that came out on Monday. So you have that. I'll have Cindy reshare that.
Okay. Terrific. I think that does it. Anybody have anything else to add? Giant thank you to all of you, to all of our staff, to food service, to the custodial staff, transportation, everybody who makes this district work every day. We sincerely appreciate your efforts. Stay safe, everyone. Can we have a motion?
Thank you, everyone.
We have a
Thank
motion
you.
to adjourn, please. Sue, and a second, Linda. Okay. Thank you. Take care, everyone.